The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, good morning. We are off and rolling here on a Monday. I hope you all had a great weekend. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ruring, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Guys, good morning. How are we? Happy Monday.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a happy Monday, but it is Monday. It is Monday. It's not exactly great weather outside. The Reds suck, and the basketball crown starts. But other than that, we're ready to roll. What a fun week ahead of us we have.
Yeah, nice and rainy out. Whatever that was last night, the wind and thunder, it was louder than I've ever heard in my entire life. It was good. Last time I talked to you guys, I said the only thing keeping me afloat with the Reds being as miserable as they were was at least my basketball team rocks. We got suffocated and drowned in the Elite Eight by Duke, so that wasn't fun at all. And I'm back to the same hell everyone else in Cincinnati's in.
I follow a team that has Kenny Pickett as their only quarterback on the roster. I don't feel bad for any of you. I think all of you are doing just swell compared to me. But Casey, good morning. How are we? How are we doing today?
Oh, we're doing all right. Unlike the last couple weeks where I proclaimed I haven't watched any sports in a while, I actually got to watch a lot over the weekend. I got to watch the Reds, got to watch FC. It was a good weekend. It was a good time. And look forward to talking about all those things.
You sent us a text on Saturday.
I did.
About Celentano.
I did.
What did he do?
Oh, man. I mean, it was unbelievable. I can't show it on stream because it would get demonetized. But he had just a fantastic set of multiple blocked shots in a row that were just unbelievable. I mean, he blocked one, it ricochets. The guy tries to head it in. He blocks it again, tips it with his foot. Like, there was just like a whole bunch of shenanigans that happened. And he was just fantastic on Saturday. I mean, not just that one specific play. He was lights out pretty much the entire game. I think there was a penalty kick at one point where he just completely saved it. I mean, just made it look easy. He's the GOAT right now. I mean, he is absolutely fantastic. So
There we go. Maybe if the Reds keep trending this way and I get driven into a deep enough, dark enough depression, I'll hop on the FC train to try to get some joy.
Yeah. They won.
They did win.
There we go.
They did win. They got a lot more work to do to get better, but yeah, small steps.
It's early in the 13-month season, so they got a lot of time.
Very early.
They got a lot of time to.
Very early.
Same with the Reds.
That's right.
Same
That's
with the
right.
Reds. Very
That's
early.
right. 162 games, somehow half the length of the season.
Yeah.
162 game regular season. There's 159 games left, but somehow the season's done. Everyone's given up. They have quit. Not you guys, of course, but close, it sounds like. But, very interesting weekend on the old social media machines in reaction to the Reds' up and down start to the season. Obviously, the opening day loss against the Giants, and then they rebound with the big win on Saturday, and then they reminded you that, hey, maybe – it doesn't matter who's the manager of the team. Maybe this is a lot like the 2024 team. We're going to get into all of that. I am curious your guys' thoughts on the backlash Terry Francona is getting early on. I mean, we're 3 games in, and already people are lashing out. I mean, we'll get to all of that coming up. ESPN Bet put out their win totals for the upcoming 2025 NFL season. Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, as of all the negative talk surrounding the Bengals, outside of course, getting those deals done with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, it seems like Vegas is in favor of the Bengals, even with the lack of additions that they've made this offseason. We'll get to that coming up around the corner as well. The Final Four is set, as Jacob just mentioned a little bit ago. His team, Alabama, not a part of it, but the one seed phenomenon is taking over the Final Four, and we'll get to that shortly. Cooper Flagg has been the face of the tournament thus far, and this isn't a legit question as far as I'm curious about. I'm curious your guys' thoughts more, but I keep seeing people throwing out Cooper Flagg, the best one-and-done player of all time. We'll get to that debate coming up later on in the program as well. But before we do any of that, let's kick it over to Elliot for Elliot's Headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
No whistle. No, it's gloomy. Reds stink. My team's out of it.
I don't know if I'm going to ever feel the whistle again.
No, probably not. Maybe if it gets sunny. Like first day it's sunny.
Yeah, maybe if the weather's ever.
I don't know. I do think the most important headline that's going to start this segment is that the Elite Eight was 1-2, 1-2, 1-3, and someone on this program said every 1-2 is going to make the Elite Eight except for St. John's. That's exactly what's going to happen, or exactly what did happen. And it was me.
Did I say
I'm
that
person?
Oh,
no, you didn't say that.
I'm that person.
Okay.
I like bringing up the receipts when I'm good. The chat has it covered when I'm bad, so I just like to remind them when I get a couple right.
Duke, they destroyed Alabama 85-65. Sears, 2 for 12 from the floor, 6 points. Womp womp.
Yeah, when you go 10 for 16 or whatever it was in the Sweet 16, he was due for an absolute stinker. It was a shame it had to happen against Duke.
I bought into Jacob's propaganda Saturday night,
Yeah.
and I bet Alabama, and what a mistake that was. So.
You were respectful enough not to text me until the next day. I really did appreciate that because
Correct.
I was down in the dumps.
I was going to text you all. I wasn't going to stop texting you, but I said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. As soon as they dropped 137 on BYU, I knew they were going to lose that game. They were going to be unable to score. Kneppel, 21 points. He was the leading scorer. Only 6 for 15 from the floor. That was an ugly game. It was just Duke was better, way better defensively than Alabama was. Florida, they stormed back from 9 down with under 3 minutes to go. They won 84-79 over Texas Tech. For those of us who live bet Florida at plus 350 with 3 minutes left, we're winners.
Good for you.
We're winners.
Good for you.
So I never had a single shred of doubt.
Those of us that
in
had
their
Florida in our Final Four and Texas Tech plus 5.5 ended that night in a real good spot.
That's right. Auburn, yesterday, they survived Broom's injury scare. They win 70-64 over Michigan State. That's a game where you look at the box score, you say, oh, that was kind of a good game. That game was never close.
Correct.
At one moment was that game never close. They went on, I think Auburn went on a 17-0 run at some point early on. Then Michigan State went on like a little 10-0 run. And then after that, it was just over. I mean, at no point did I feel like that game was even remotely competitive.
Auburn hit their 36th 10-0 run of the season, distantly the most in the country.
Really?
Yeah.
How about that? Houston, they obliterate Tennessee 69-50. The Vols, they scored 15 points in the first half. SEC.
Tennessee will make it to the Final Four someday. You will not get me upset about Tennessee not making the Final Four because they are very, very upset about that. And anytime people in orange start to cry, I get happy.
Yeah. All 4 1 seeds have advanced to the Final Four for only the second time in history. The first was in 2008. Kansas, North Carolina, Memphis, and UCLA, all 1 seeds in that Final Four. Today is also the first day of the historic basketball crown. The basketball crown, Utah versus Butler, they tip off at 3 p.m. George Washington, the first president, he's up against Boise State at 5:30. You have Nebraska squaring off with Arizona State at 8:30. And then if you're really sick in the head, you can stay up at 11 p.m. and watch Georgetown take on Washington State on FS1. So feel free to watch that one. Tune in if you want some good basketball.
We can dunk on the crown as much as we want, and we will continue to on this program.
And I will, of course I will.
But the schedule, kudos to them. Kudos to them for tipping these games off at 3 p.m. I feel like it would have been very easy for them to, stuff, 2 games within an hour at 7 or whatever the NCAA has done over the last couple of weeks. But giving us day games, that's the only chance you have people to watch this tournament. So
yeah.
I think it's going to help.
Yeah, I mean, they could have scheduled them all at the same time. They could have not scheduled them at all. It's not going to help the TV ratings for this one. Major League Baseball. We'll head over to Major League Baseball. The Reds, they lose the series yesterday to the Giants. 6-3, the final score. Martinez started off good. It fell apart relatively quickly. 6 innings, 4 hits, 4 earned runs, 5 strikeouts. The Reds only had 5 hits in the game. 2 of those were home runs. Matt McLain hit his second of the year. Austin Wynns hit a 2-run shot. The Reds, this is an interesting stat. And honest to God, I couldn't even believe it was true.
It's not. It can't be.
The Cincinnati Reds have now lost 32 consecutive series when losing the first game of the series. That dates back to June 2023. So if the Reds lose the first game of a series, they're going to lose the series. That's just over the last 2.5 years or so, that's what it's been. 32 straight series when dropping that first game.
I read that stat to Casey this morning, and he goes, wow, opening day series? No, Casey. 32 straight series overall. I couldn't believe it either. That's one of the most embarrassing stats I've ever seen.
Baseball series, all of them. Reds, they take on the Rangers 6:40 tonight, GABP. It is Brady Singer versus Kumar Rocker. See you guys there. Padres, they blank the Braves 5-0. The Mariners, they squeak one out over the A's 2-1. The Chicago Cubs, they led 5-2 heading into the bottom of the 8th inning yesterday. That is where the Diamondbacks dropped 8. Diamondbacks win 10-6 over the Cubs. The Rangers, they get past the Red Sox 3-2. The Cardinals, they obliterate the Twins to complete that sweep. 9-2 the final score yesterday afternoon. The Angels, they take the series from the White Sox after a 3-2 win yesterday. I didn't have the graphic with me, but the White Sox were unable to completely tarp their field yesterday. Yeah. So what did they do? They just got a bunch of anything that was plastic and just threw it out there. It was like a hoarder was trying to cover their lawn with garbage. That's how they treat their field in Chicago. Well, I guess in the other part of Chicago. But good for them.
That's kind of funny.
That organization's terrible.
Two sides of Chicago, probably the team that respects their field the most or close to it. And the other side of Chicago, I mean, I'll try to find the picture and send it to Casey. But, man, what an unbelievable display that was.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough. The Guardians, they beat the Royals 6-2. Got scary late. Jonathan India was beamed in the head by Clase in the 9th inning. I don't know what the update is on Jonathan India. But obviously visibly upset, stormed off the field. Scary situation.
Played in left field.
Huh?
Played in left field.
That's right. Marlins, they take the series from the Pirates. 3-1, they win that series with 3 walk-offs. They had 3 wins in the series. Every single win was via the walk-off. Yesterday it was a wild pitch that got them the win. Yankees, they blow out the Brewers again yesterday. They won 12-3. They tie the MLB mark with 15 home runs in their first 3 games. 15 home runs in their first 3 games. And I'm sure real soon we're going to have a discussion about whether or not their bat situation is legal. The torpedo bat it might be saving baseball, so we'll see. And finally, we have Bengals news. Zach Taylor, he sat down at the coach's breakfast with Paul Dehner Jr.
That's right. He sat down for about an hour. Paul Dehner said he was the first one in and last one out.
Yeah.
So getting a lot of information from old Zach today. I'll just cover some of the bullet points as they're rolling in on X, the Everything app. Taylor said earlier today that it seems like the Bengals are done with free agent guard additions. Lucas Patrick will be the end of that line, and they'll focus on the draft. He did mention that adding guard in the draft could be one of their top priorities. So whether it's a tackle in the first round that they bump down for the next few years or looking into the later rounds, expect them to go after that when the draft rolls around at the end of April. He also said look for more starters to play in the preseason. That's one of the major takeaways of the emphasis to starting faster during this offseason so far. He said they're going to up it even from last year. We saw for the first time Joe Burrow take 1 series in the preseason. Next year, expect at least probably a full game, maybe even into that second week. Taylor also said that nothing on Trey Hendrickson has made a ton of progress, though they are still working through, as he said, the contract process with his agent and Trey Hendrickson's camp. Not sure what that means, but at least that door is still open and conversations are happening. He added that Jermaine Pratt is still part of the team despite his trade request earlier this offseason, and they will see where that goes. No new information there, but I would still expect a cut or a trade at his cap number. If he doesn't want to be here, I don't think he's one of the players that you bend over backwards to try to keep. I think you just make that happen and move on. He added that Dax Hill, coming off the ACL tear last year, is doing well in his rehab process, but didn't give any timeline in terms of him returning by camp or week 1, though that is expected. He also said that playing from ahead and less do-or-die situations in the second half is what he thinks will help the offensive line most this season, even more than maybe personnel. He said adding more to the run game as well will take a lot off their shoulders, and he's absolutely right. You get those big 300-pounders moving forward, it's a lot easier to play football than when you're moving back 50 times a game. So certainly things like that can help with less personnel than we'd like added. If you change some of the scheme stuff, that could help those guys. And then finally, he added that he likes the direction Geno Stone was going in at safety at the end of the season, but said everyone can have competition and the entire unit needs to tackle better. So maybe a mid or late round addition at safety there, though it does seem like we are done in free agency. Maybe adding to the back end of the defense could be something they attack in the draft.
Those are your headlines.
One last headline rolled in while you were reading them. A 5-star safety, number 1 safety in the 2026 class, has committed to Ohio State, first 5-star commitment of the 2026 class. And another college football headline, Andrew Luck, the GM of Stanford, notably fired their coach over the weekend. He just hired Frank Reich, his old coach with the Colts, to take over for Stanford on a 1-year rental basis. So an interim coach for Frank Reich. Usually see those interim hires coming from inside the program. This, an interim hire from outside.
So he's the head coach of Stanford for just like a 1-year deal, you said?
Frank Reich is the interim football coach for the 2025 season. I don't even know how that contract works, if interim's going to be in the title, but not even a full head coaching title, but it seems like a 1-year rental for Frank Reich as they try to figure that out.
Interesting. Now, I have one more, too, to add from college basketball. We had Paul Frister on last week. Obviously, Richard Pitino, the new head coach at Xavier. A lot of people expected Donovan Dent, the Mountain West Player of the Year, to leave New Mexico and transfer with Richard Pitino over to Xavier. A lot of Xavier fans were keeping an eye on that, but former Cincinnati coach Mick Cronin found a way to kind of poke at his former rival one more time because he was able to land Donovan Dent over at UCLA. Donovan Dent, one of the top portal players in the country, commits to UCLA over the weekend. Thought that was an interesting tie-in right there. Mick Cronin finding a way to poke at his former rival, the Xavier Musketeers.
I think he might like Xavier more than UC at this point, so I don't know.
I mean, that's why Villanova wanted Mick Cronin. So
yeah.
I mean, he can get these guys. He's a good recruiter, and obviously he makes a difference in the tournament. I mean, they looked good this year until they ran into a buzzsaw.
Yeah.
In the open of the show, you hear Elliot say the 2024 season is officially over. I wonder how long into 2025 we're going to get before we get that sounder once again. But we'll get to that when we come back. The Cincinnati Reds are 3 games into the season, and everyone is losing their mind. We're going to talk about that when we come back. 1-2 start for the Reds. They have their second series of the season that gets underway later on tonight. We'll talk about that as well. Plenty of Reds talk coming your way. Don't go anywhere. Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, and, of course, Nick Martinez, your 1, 2, and 3 pitchers to kick off the season, of course. And felt pretty confident that with those 3 on the mound that the Reds, well, had a very high probability rate of winning. And I think a lot of us felt pretty good about the Reds' chances heading into this series, although there was a lot of doubters, a lot of naysayers out there who were never going to really buy into the Cincinnati Reds, no matter which manager they added in the offseason. They didn't really, with bringing in Terry Francona, it's not like they loaded up the roster and went and showed that they were all in. It was an all-in move to get Terry Francona, but it wasn't followed up by all-in moves after. So it was kind of a weird offseason. Like there was a big-time high moment when the news came out that Terry Francona was coming to take over as manager. But there was really nothing after that to kind of complement that move. That's a World Series move, getting Terry Francona, but there was nothing but what less than wild card moves after that to complement it. So it led to a very weird vibe off season, if that's what you want to call it. Now there were some built-in excuses, if that's what you want to call it, with the back and forth, the tug of war with the network deals, whether it was the games were going to be carried by MLB or whether it was going to be Bally, and now it's FanDuel TV, and there was just a lot of tug of war going on with the media rights deal throughout. And of course that was the built-in excuse for the loss of revenue that they were going to be able to utilize to attack the offseason, even though history tells us that even all the revenue they have coming in, they're in the bottom 10 of using that money towards their roster anyway. So it was just a built-in excuse to kind of make us feel better about it, if you will. Bottom line is, we thought with Terry Francona we'd see less errors, that with Terry Francona leading the way, less base running blunders. And unfortunately, 3 games in, we're seeing a lot of the same mistakes that we saw plague this team last year. Solid starting pitching. Nick Lodolo got rocked over the weekend, but then kind of was strong to close out. Hunter Green looked fantastic, no doubt about it, on opening day. I know you guys recapped that already. And then Nick Martinez, Elliot, you mentioned it in the headlines, got off to a hot start, and then it kind of fell apart pretty quickly, but did get, a couple innings into that game before it fell apart, obviously. The bottom line is everyone is all over the place with how they feel about this team right now. There's 159 games left, but man, social media, if it was that loud 3 games in, it's going to be a long 159 game season with how impatient people are right now. How do we feel 3 games in?
They're going to tucker themselves out. Everyone that's freaking out and wants Terry fired, and then the sky's falling. They'll get tired by the middle of the second series, and then we'll be able to have the rest of the 162 game season to figure it out. These changes weren't going to happen overnight. These guys have played under David Bell, and then the way that that baseball operated for many years. When you talk about an organizational structure, so you hope Terry Francona, the changes that he can make, the ironing out of the fundamentals and everything along those lines, the changes that even those of us that didn't think he was a 10-win addition, the changes we even thought he would be able to make, those don't just happen overnight. So you certainly have to give him more time. It is, like I said after opening day, just twists the knife to lose these games the same way we've lost them for the last 2 or 3 years right out of the gate. I think that's really frustrating to a lot of fans, but it is just 3 games into the season. It's probably the 3 biggest games of the season in terms of fan vibes and feelings going into the rest of the summer. But hey, we'll go over the next few months and see how it goes by the time we get to midseason before we talk about the sky actually falling. But we'll overreact every single game. That's the beauty of baseball.
Here's how I'll start. It is early. I mean, it's early. This might as well still be spring training. It's not, but it might as well be. It's
not.
It's 162 games. Not every day is going to go your way. And it didn't go our way in the first series. I'll also add on that if there was ever a fan base that deserved to complain and whine and cry and moan and pout, it's Cincinnati Reds fans. No success, very little success over the last 25 years. It's okay to be, disappointed when every single season seemingly you start off relatively slow. That's something that I understand. So I understand all Reds fans' inability to understand or calculate how long this season is at this moment, because you want to be good right now. I just want to be good. I want to watch good baseball, and I want to see the team win. Here's what I'll say. All the mistakes that happened last year, every mistake, the base running errors, the errors in general in the field, the defense, the bullpen, everybody picked on David Bell. Oh, he makes the wrong bullpen. He pulls guys too early. Every mistake that was credited to David Bell, Terry Francona's done. So, that's the part I want to say first. I think Terry Francona is a better manager. There is no disputing it. He's won a World Series. He's in the Hall of Fame. There's no disputing any of that. But he has made the same exact mistakes, if you want to call him that, because it's not him out in the field, right? We still have the same group of guys, and that goes back to what Justin Kinner said to lead off this segment. We have not made a ton of moves. We have not fixed the roster by any means. The roster is still the same roster as last year with a couple of additions. So you're still going to probably see a lot of the same things that happen. I think Terry's going to get the best out of his guys. I'm not saying he won't. But he's done the same exact thing as David Bell has because they're both working with the same exact roster. Here's the one thing that I am a little concerned about, The Reds didn't attempt a stolen base. They didn't attempt one all weekend long. No stolen base attempts. For a team that makes their money on the base path, I find that to be strange. I don't want Terry Francona to take away from what this team is. I understand the mistakes, but the mistakes are going to happen anyway. So why are we not? I understand it's one of the best catchers in the league. But we have to still have our identity. We still have to be that team. So that's why people are upset. They're upset with the lack of seemingly consistency that this team has not been able to accumulate over the last 2 years. They're not a consistent team. You can't count on them to get hits. You can't count on them to make great decisions out in the field. It's just not a great roster. I'm not going to say the season's over. Season's not over. This is what you were going to get. I said at the beginning of the year, it's going to be an exciting brand of baseball. It's going to be fun when you watch the Reds. That game yesterday didn't go our way, but it got interesting at some points. The Reds have played in close games. I'd argue they should have won the series, and that's another part of the frustration is that series the Reds kicked in and threw it away. That was our series to lose. Game 1, the Reds won that game. Terry Francona elected to throw Ian Jabot. That's what happened in this series. That's how I'm going to remember it. So we're going to move on. We got the Rangers tonight. We got the Rangers series up next. And I think the Reds are going to be better. Little by little, I'm going to hope that the Reds get better. But I would say with cautiously have, thoughts about the Reds being the team that you think they will be, right? It's the same exact roster as last year. The only difference is they're a little bit more healthy than they were. A little bit. I'm not mad at any one player. I'm not mad at any, I thought most of the guys out there, except for Spencer Steer, looked at least serviceable. Maybe Jake Fraley as well. But, I didn't think it was a bad series from any one player specifically. Maybe Ian Jabot and Spencer Steer. But those are my takeaways from that first series.
The other thing, too, is like if March mistakes are May mistakes, then I'll be concerned, then I'll have a problem. And to be fair, I'll meet people halfway. If the March mistakes that we're seeing are the same mistakes 3 weeks from now, then I'll be waving a flag saying, okay, something's up, something's wrong. But it is hard, especially with spring training. It's very hard to replicate regular season baseball. And this is for any preseason in any sport. We talk about it in football all the time. How much does the lack of reps for starters in the preseason impact the start to the regular season? I don't care if you give your starters more reps than other teams in NFL preseason. Football is ugly as hell in the first couple weeks of the season for everybody. Nobody, even the teams that get off to a good winning start, they're not playing their best football to start because they're getting rolling a little bit. Basketball, the same thing, and they have the longest preseason of them all. It starts in November. It doesn't even end until, February or March before they decide they want to start playing hard with the playoffs around the corner. Bottom line is for baseball with spring training, as we sit here right now, it's going to take a few series, I think, to for this team to get rolling, especially with David Bell or with Terry Francona, who's taking over this roster. You really can't learn your roster until you're in the middle of game time scenarios. And he's still learning his bullpen. You could say, well, just look at the numbers from last year. I think he's a different type of manager than most managers in baseball. I think, is he going to have to learn for himself on some of these? Unfortunately, it looks like that's the case. But I do feel like an old school baseball manager like him, he's not going to be told what to do. He's going to do what he believes is right. And I think we saw that. I don't know if you guys saw the quote, Charlie Goldsmith that tweeted it out over the weekend, that, if you manage like a fan, you're a fan or something. I can't remember the exact quote, but basically saying he didn't regret how he went about the rollout for the opening day game with Jabot or whatever. He did say he would have liked to use guys differently throughout that. But as far as the sequence, he didn't mind it. I kind of like that approach, not caving and saying, hey, I was wrong, blah, blah, blah. I think right now he's still learning this roster. He's learning how to utilize guys, and I think that's going to improve as the season goes on as well. My frustration, I tweeted out yesterday, is anyone out there that, Tito was supposed to fix this? We're 3 games in. If these March problems still exist 3 weeks from now or in the month of May, I'll be screaming from the hilltop with you. But for right now, I don't think we could put too much into the first 3 games of the season. I think it needs to play out a little bit as far as that's concerned.
I don't think it's an indictment on Terry Francona. I don't think it's an indictment. They had the same issues that David Bell had last year. The same exact complaints. Yeah. Everything's the same. It's because you can't force a guy to be good at defense. I can't make Jeimer Candelario know how to tag a guy. Right? I can't make the errors from Elly stop. You can't make that happen. It's going to happen on its own. The plate approach has been better, I've felt, for the Reds. There's little things that I see that is a little bit different. But I don't think firing David Bell and bringing in Terry Francona was going to be the X factor for 15-plus games. Jacob and I have said that for a long time now. We never thought Terry Francona was going to be the automatic 10-win guy. It just wasn't going to happen that way. I think, like Kinder just said, over time you're going to see differences, but it's still the same roster. It's the exact same. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. It's the first series of the year. But this is why I don't overreact when it comes to the manager, because you're going to see a lot of hypocrisy out there when it comes to Terry Francona this season. And that's okay. Everybody can feel how they want to feel, But it's not Terry's fault that guys on this roster make mistakes the same way it wasn't David Bell's fault. So I'm gonna continue to pound home that, the players in the field have to play better. That's on them. They have to be better. The one concern I mentioned is the lack of stolen bases. I'm not sure what that's about. If we're going to cut off the identity of who we were kind of last year, being exciting on the base path, I will say that does worry me.
Yeah.
Because the Reds' offense isn't good. I mean, we can spin it however you want. There's a couple guys I trust, and outside of that, I don't have too much on this offense to be hopeful about. So if we're not going to make moves, if we're not going to get to second base, if we're not going to get to third base, if we're not going to be aggressive out there, I have a hard time believing the offensive struggles from last year are going to improve significantly. At least that's what I take away from that first series.
And you see a lot of people saying, well, when Tyler gets back and he's catching, and obviously his bat in the lineup, and when Austin Hayes is back and you have the roster you expect, so we really are just banking on full, complete health. If we don't have everybody, we can't be competitive. At this point, we have a decent chunk of the roster here.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the guys that you agreed to go into opening day with. We have a few starters out, but you should be able to overcome this level of injuries. Last year, when it was Noelvi with the suspension, CES got hurt early in the year, Matt McLain was out. That's a different story. TJ Friedl in and out of the lineup. Right now, it's really two difference makers, three if you consider Spencer Steer completely hurt. This team should be able to overcome that, and the fact that you're losing a series based off mental mistakes, this is the concern that we brought up on this show as soon as Terry Francona was put on the table to be the Reds manager. Is that going to be the big signing of the offseason? Because if it is, it's not enough. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how much he can move the floor and or ceiling of a lot of the players on this roster as the 162-game season progresses. But to lose the first series of the year the same exact way that David Bell lost series after series, and evidently the reason that this fan base ran David Bell out of town, to watch it again, watch the same brand of baseball on opening weekend, that's just certainly not where we thought we'd be right now, or an easy pill to swallow.
I don't want to be too pessimistic on the show. I'm going to try to be positive, Elliot, for a little bit longer. But this series, maybe was managed. I don't even want to say it. I think David Bell wins this series, though. I'll say that. I think David Bell wins this series. I think there's a couple of mistakes, and maybe Kinner's right. Maybe Terry just doesn't know the in-game situations with guys like Ian Jabot yet. Because if you look at the numbers on paper, right, Ian Jabot hurt all of last year and had a solid 2023. He was solid, I'd argue, because he'd pitch in games that didn't matter, and he'd go 3.5 innings in blowouts. You know what I mean? There were other factors at play with guys like Ian Jabot that skew those numbers. I think Terry Francona should probably know that coming into the regular season. But again, it's early. Everybody calm down. The Giants have good pitching. Yep. It's a good team. That's not a horrible baseball team. It just is like what Jacob said. Losing that is frustrating because they absolutely should have won that series.
All right, we'll step away for a few when we come back. It is interesting seeing how many, there's a lot. I forgot who it was. It might have been Trace. I forgot who tweeted it out over the weekend that the honeymoon stage for Terry Francona seems to just have disappeared very, very quickly. And it is interesting how aggressive fans are being towards Terry Francona and his decision-making just 3 games in. And I have a theory as to why. Everything that Terry Francona does is actually not going to be praised. It's going to be criticized a lot if winning is not coming instantly. And we'll discuss when we come back. Plus, you just heard Elliot say, we're going to be a little bit more optimistic. There was a lot of positive takeaways that we saw. There's a lot of guys that did things over the weekend that I think once you clean up some of the blunders, the offensive production from some key guys over the weekend, I was actually very impressed with, and we'll talk about that. Christian Encarnacion-Strand and others. So we have more Reds talk coming up next. Don't go anywhere. More Off the Bench when we return. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. We are back here off the bench. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. One key takeaway I had from just the opening series of the season is, and again, every fan base, you're going to have a pocket of fans who are going to be overly critical no matter what happens. I mean, that's just the reality of it. I mean, the Cardinals are 3-0 to start the season, and I saw, people still complaining about the Cardinals. So, there's pockets of those fans in every fan base. But what I was a little taken back by was how many people right off the bat had no problem being aggressive and criticizing Terry Francona. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not against that. If you want to criticize Terry Francona, that's okay. All I'm saying is I'm taken back by it a little bit because I thought that, it's Terry Francona. I thought the guy could do no wrong, right? And that's not mocking anyone. That's just how I felt. I was like, man, he's such a big figure coming in that there's going to be a lot of people that even with mistakes early might have the in Terry Francona we trust mentality. I actually don't think that's going to be the case because, for one, we've already seen that. But my theory to this is I think the reason people are going to be so aggressive towards Terry Francona, guys, is mainly because he kind of feels like our last hope. Because if we can't win with Terry Francona leading the way, if this team can't find a way to turn it around with a real manager like Terry Francona, it truly feels like it's going to be a kick in the groin moving forward when you can't find ways to win with a generational player in Elly De La Cruz, Matt McLain, who, by the way, good for him. I was worried that maybe the hype was getting a little bit too big because we saw such a small sample size. I was pumping the brakes on being all in on Matt McLain guy because we hadn't even seen a full regular season. Man, the kid's special. This kid's unbelievable. Cincinnati, the city of duos, if you will. When you look at Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow with the Bengals and now Elly De La Cruz and Matt McLain with the Reds, it's pretty cool seeing those dynamics there. But I think the reason people are so aggressive towards Terry Francona is because they're just pleading with him, like, figure it out. For the love of God, please. Because if we can't win with Hunter Green, if we can't win with Elly De La Cruz and Matt McLain, and we can't win with Terry Francona, we will never, ever win again in this city. And I do believe that part of me feels like that's one reason why we're seeing fans be so aggressive early, is that it's almost like a pleading with him type of thing, because it's the reality of, man, we put all of our eggs, a lot of the fan base put a lot of eggs in the basket of David Bell's the problem. Get a real manager in here and the rest will fall into place. And 3 games in, people are panicking and they don't like what they see. And Terry Francona is not safe either at this point when it comes to fan backlash. My theory is it just feels like he is our last hope at this actually working. And if it doesn't work with him, I think that's when you'll see the fan base hit an all-time low if that's the case.
When else can Cincinnati and the Reds specifically get this? When else can you get a Hall of Fame manager with a generational shortstop and a Cy Young favorite, at least in the mix, as your ace? What other box do you need to check to go out and compete? I mean, you have these 3 guys for very cheap. Obviously, the manager's contract doesn't count against payroll or anything along those lines. We've talked extensively about how awesome Hunter's contract is to be the pitcher he is for this rotation. And then Elly on his rookie deal, before we have to have any kind of conversation about extensions in 2 or 3 years, this is the time when you should be going, quote-unquote, all in. And I didn't even mention Matt McLain also on a rookie deal, 2 home runs over the weekend. Looks like the guy we expected him to be. I mean, this team has every box you need to check for a small market team to be competitive. And if it doesn't work out, I guess the question we have to ask as Reds fans is when will we be able to check anywhere near this number of boxes again? I mean, when will we hit the lottery of having these things line up again? We talked on the opening day stream that the next core, if you will, coming through the Reds organization doesn't necessarily line up right with the end of this one. There's a gap, and that gap is what the Chattanooga Lookouts were last year, and that's one of the worst minor league teams in all of affiliated baseball. So, I mean, this has to work. This 3-4 year window, whatever we want to call it, with Terry Francona and Elly De La Cruz and the first 4 years of the 6-year deal of Hunter Green. I mean, this has to work. This team has to be competitive. And I don't think it working necessarily means we get a World Series or we don't. I think it's the fact that, we're consistently competitive for the division and we're winning playoff series and we're advancing and we're doing something we haven't seen in the last 30 years. And that's what we should be able to have in the expectation with this group. And I'm not losing that off of one series, but it's hard to grasp on to some kind of massive overhaul and change to this franchise when we've lost the opening series the same way we've lost the last 2 years. And it's the things that we thought maybe could change overnight, and they didn't. It was base running mistakes. It was errors. It was fielding issues. It was dumb mental mistakes that bit this team. And I just don't know when you draw the line in the sand. You said if March issues are May issues, you'll start pulling your hair out. You're still not even to the All-Star break. Are we allowed to freak out then? Then you're only 1 year in to Terry Francona. Are you allowed to freak out then? I think that's going to be the hardest part with this whole thing for Reds fans. Is not only is it year one of Terry Francona, this lineup we all know isn't up to snuff with trying to win a World Series or anything along those lines. And we know that this core, though we think that they are MVP contenders and Cy Young contenders and all-stars, they're all very young players that have a long ways to go. So when is it okay to hit the panic button with this team? I don't know. It might not even be this year. So I think that's a very, very frustrating thing with Reds fans is we want immediate change because we haven't seen any kind of relative success in so long. It's different if we've seen this team, mess with success over the last 20 years and now we start slow and it's okay, well, maybe we'll figure it out. And if not this year, at least, we won a playoff series 4 years ago and we don't have that here. We thought we had immediate change in hiring Terry Francona, and we didn't get it in Series 1, so that's why, fans are losing their mind. And with the amount of success or lack thereof that the Reds team has given Cincinnati over the last however many years, they have every right to lose their mind.
And you said it kind of right there. The clock is ticking. The Cincinnati Reds clock is ticking.
Right.
I know it's speaking a little bit in exaggeration here. But once the Elly deal doesn't happen, right, and he goes through his contract, that's like the time frame that we have because it pretty much goes together with how long Terry Francona's here. It goes together with a lot of other guys as well. And that's my mark. If the Reds aren't going to be able to have success by the year 2029, they're never going to have. They're just never going to have success. That's just what it is, And not to compare us to the Angels, and I won't do that. The Angels had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani and were unable to win baseball games on the same roster. They had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. They didn't win games. So this isn't like a new thing amongst Major League Baseball. You can have elite talent and not be great. The Reds have to build a roster that's capable of winning a lot of games. This roster is not capable of winning a lot of games. I still think it's capable of being competitive. I think there's a difference. But this is not a playoff caliber roster. It's not. I think they can fight. And I think they can finish second in the division. But what does that get you at the end of the year? I don't know. Probably nothing. I'd imagine second in the NL Central gets you absolutely zilch. The division is not good. Going forward, I would like to see the Reds, at least the young guys that we have, develop, get better, improve, and I need it to happen relatively quickly. I never once said this team was a World Series caliber team this year. Next year is when the pressure is going to start to be put on. Next year, I'm going to start needing significant changes. I'm not even going to call it a rebuild year. This is like a bounce back year. This is the year that happens after a colossal disaster, and we're just trying to get our feet under us again. That's what I'm going to call this year. I know fans aren't going to want to hear it. That's just what it is. That's how I picture it. I'm not mad at Terry Francona. I'm not mad at the players. This is just the roster that has been given to us. Until we know what we've got here, there's no way of knowing. I love Matt McLain. We're going to get into the positives too. Matt McLain, fantastic. I love Matt McLain. CES, proving me wrong game by game. But we've got about 4 to 5 guys, especially with Stevenson out right now and Spencer Steer nowhere to be found. With those 2 guys seemingly out of the picture, there's not enough pieces to drive home runs, to steal bases, to do the things that you need to do to be a championship caliber team. There's not enough guys. I thought the bullpen, for what it's worth, I think the bullpen had a great weekend. I think the bullpen played outside of one guy. They pitched fine. I thought the starting pitching for the most part pitched great. I thought Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green, did they look rusty at times? Sure, but they looked great. Nick Martinez threw 4 innings yesterday was great. Fell apart at the end, but he looked solid. The Reds have enough pieces here to be competitive. We're just going to need Terry Francona to be the guy that I don't firmly believe that he's going to be. I don't know if he's going to be that elevator that we all think he's going to take us to the top.
How many months or series or how much do you think that this season is extended by the NL Central? And what I mean by that is kind of what we saw last year when you're just looking around and you're watching the Reds day in and day out, and you're just not excited about this team. You're just not blown away in terms of them being a contender. But every time you pull up the standings, you're still right there. And you have to, stay invested and see where this season could go. How long, though we might know the answer about this team when it comes to contention very, very soon, how long will this season be extended by playing in an NL Central that is one of, if not the worst divisions in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, we are going to – the Cincinnati Reds, again, this is why early on in the year, the Reds are going to be in talks to win the division, to be in contention for the division for a long time. The season is not over. It's not even remotely close to being over. It's just from what I've seen on paper, it's because I watched it all last year. I kind of know what's going to happen this year. If CES can be a generational superstar, great. If Matt McLain's going to be that guy, great. Elly, we know already is. So we have some of the pieces. We just don't have them all yet. To answer your question, the division's going to be open for a very, very, very long time, and that's going to keep the Reds in it. It's going to keep pretty much everybody in the Central in it. Maybe not. I mean, the Brewers, they look terrible, but I guess they played the torpedo bats, so who knows?
They did.
Who knows? I think the Pirates are always terrible. I don't even count them as a real franchise. But the Reds, the Brewers, the Cubs, and maybe the Cardinals, maybe they're going to fight for it. But like Kinner said, nobody's thinking the Cardinals are great. They swept the Twins, the opening series. Nobody thinks the Cardinals are great. They're 3-0 right now. Nobody thinks they're great. It's early. It's so early. No need to be too dramatic. No need to be too dramatic, but I would say that you can't really be shocked at what you've seen. Like, there's no reason to be shocked at what you've seen when it's the same exact team as last year.
Yep, and I'm glad you brought up, that division, too. That's a good point, Jacob, about that. That's one thing, too, that, when Terry Francona was with the Guardians and the Indians, at the time, that division was also bad. Yeah. And there was a lot of times where I didn't think that the Indians had a very good team. I didn't think that the Guardians had a very good team. They were, let me be clear, they had a very good roster. You know what I mean? But, I didn't think that they were as good as what they were being propped up to be because they played in such a poor division, or they would be right there in the mix of things because how poor the division is. He's going to have that same type of thing here in the NL Central with this Reds team, but can they hang around and take advantage of a weak division the way that his Indians and Guardians team did in the past? We're going to switch over to the positives. I know, obviously, Elliot, you touched on a few of those. We'll switch to the positives in a moment, but last thing here on Terry Francona, are you guys surprised at how much backlash he has caught 3 games into the season? Or maybe I'm making a bigger deal about it than it actually is. I, for one, am surprised at how quickly fans have jumped on Terry Francona. Are you guys surprised?
I was surprised all year last year with how much blame people continued to put on David Bell, so I won't put anything past the masses of this fan base at this point. So, we did say on the opening day show that we thought Terry Francona had a locked-in honeymoon period, and obviously that lasted about 12 hours till the 9th inning of that game. So, yeah, I guess I would be surprised how quick it is, but to watch the season we had last year where you barely had a roster of major league players and somehow most of this fan base does the mental gymnastics to blame the failures of that team on David Bell, I won't put anything past him. So, yeah, I can't say I'm too shocked.
I'm not shocked at all. They kicked our other manager out of town.
What is this, 3 in a row?
Same problem. So, huh?
3 in a row?
Yeah. I listen. I'm not gonna cheer against Terry Francona. I'm not gonna do it. That's what I'm not gonna do. I'm not gonna let this negativity overwhelm my body and say I'm right. I'm not gonna do it because we're 3 games into a season and I can be very much wrong. I won't do it. Now, if all these problems continue until September, then I probably will do it.
Well, I said yesterday, too, I was like, the last time the Reds had a Hall of Fame caliber manager and the fans thought they knew more than he did, well, we just got a decade of Brian Price and Riggleman and David Bell. So, maybe let's –
Don't throw Riggleman in
That's
there.
a stray for him. He didn't deserve that.
Unnecessary.
He pitched – he managed great.
He did an admirable job. He tried his hardest.
It was a good extra bullet point to add because you're right. I could have just said Brian Price and David Bell, but I needed that extra. I could have thrown Freddie Benavidez in there for that 5-game run.
That's true.
As well. But yeah, Freddie Benavidez. Let's just add him in there too. That's what you got the last time this fan base thought they knew more than a Hall of Fame manager. Let's just put it that way. But all right, we'll step away for a few when we come back. There are still a lot of things I felt good about what we saw over the weekend, and I'm not going to sit here and be a fluff guy. I'm not going to be talking about these fluff pieces a month, 2 months into the season. But I really wanted to see what Christian Encarnacion-Strand was going to do. I touched on it earlier. Matt McLain scared the hell out of me coming in because I thought it was going to be a real gut punch. if he regressed or didn't look the part. Even 3 games in, it would have been enough to make me nervous. I really love watching the fact that he's a pro's pro and picked up right where he left off his rookie season after missing all of last year. Elly's been fantastic. A lot of positive takeaways about Hunter Green and others. We're going to turn our attention towards the positives ahead of a new series tonight against the Rangers. So we'll be right back. More Reds talk when we come back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here on a Monday. During the break, we were talking about those storms that came in last night. I live in Kettering. The storms came through 5-10 minutes, pretty intense. I think at one point it was reported about 75-mile-per-hour winds. And then it kind of died down and moved on. But it looked like Cincinnati, you guys got hit with the majority of the red on the radar as far as that goes. So you guys got hit pretty good last night.
I don't think I got destroyed. It was just solid rain and lightning, like Jacob said, for probably an hour. It wasn't anything to be too scared of. At least from where I was. Some people got it way worse than I did. So, not too bad in the old Sailor Park.
Usually you hear about these type of things coming, and I don't know if I just missed it or what, but I didn't have any expectation for that last night. So
yeah.
I was caught off guard when I heard that thunder for sure. No, not at all. I didn't hear anything about this.
But you were watching March Madness, right?
Yeah.
And you didn't see the local stuff. If you were watching it locally, you didn't see it.
I watched it on March Madness Live.
There you go. Okay. I wasn't doubting you. I'm just saying.
No,
I was like,
I watched it all on streaming.
Up with it all.
Yeah, so I guess that's why. I guess that's your answer. Well, I was watching on streaming. But that would maybe watch local TV and it'll tell you when a storm's coming. Taken.
I think we watched it on. I think it was an illegal streaming site. So we definitely didn't.
No go for Elly Rui either.
Yeah.
So when you get that signal from Bangladesh, they're not giving you the Cincinnati weather at the bottom. Like that's not how that works.
So. I don't know how that works. I don't know how that. I don't. It was not mine. It was a friend of mine. I don't know how that thing works.
Oh yeah, a friend. I believe you.
Good save.
That was a good save. Thank you. I thought it was great.
Authorities. Oh man. Opened up obviously reaction to the first 3 games of the season for the Reds, and although I'm 1-2. You're right. They could have easily been 2-1. They should have taken that series. The opening day is where they really missed their mark. I was a little frustrated yesterday too because they'd come back, they'd cut it to within 1, and then the very next inning it kind of blew back up again. And then you get runners in the 8th inning on first and second with no out, and you had an opportunity there to at least get a run, maybe 2, to make it interesting heading into the 9th. But once they blew that inning up, I knew the game was done. There's still a lot that people are frustrated about, and I get that, as far as that's concerned. But there were still a lot of things I felt pretty positive about. I kind of let it be known a little bit ago, guys, like Christian Encarnacion-Strand. We got to see the power already. We got to see back-to-back games where he's made an impact in games 2 and 3 of that series. And I love to see the fact that he's healthy and that it wasn't just a health issue last year or a mental issue. It's the fact he could play. And I think we're seeing that early. Hopefully that continues into the series with the Rangers coming up later on tonight. Really liked what we saw from Elly, obviously. I mean, he's their star. But Matt McLain, to me, is the one that I feel the most positive about coming out of the weekend, mainly because, like I shared earlier, I was really concerned that we were overhyping him. He didn't play we talked about his rookie season. He didn't even play a full rookie season, and he was banged up that rookie season, and then he missed all of last year. And the excitement we had last year was because of the performance of a lot of these guys in their rookie year. And we saw guys regress. We saw guys who were injured and out for the year. We really haven't seen, outside of Elly, have a great rookie year and then extend it and build upon it for the next year. And Elly has done that now heading into year 3 here. But Matt McLain, I feel very good about the fact that, man, he picked up right where he left off. And it's not just that he's putting the ball in play. He's hitting it out of the ballpark, and he actually had a couple that were warning track over the weekend as well. So I'm very happy to see that the power is there and that he can actually, that he is the guy that we saw his rookie year and obviously better. And I think that that's going to go really, really well for the Reds. When you're getting production from your actual core, then you can start turning your attention elsewhere. What stinks is when you're not getting production from your core and then the others are not, producing behind them. I feel pretty good. The most coming out of the weekend, love what I saw from Christian Encarnacion-Strand, and I feel pretty good about watching Matt McLain pick up from where he left off his rookie year.
Yeah, you touched on it right there. The core doesn't matter if you don't get any production from your core. So we can talk about, the infield being, CES, Matt McLain, Elly De La Cruz, all we want. But if 2 of those 3 guys aren't playing, it doesn't matter how great the young core is. So to come out in the opening weekend, I know we lost. I know the series, fell through our fingertips, which is a tough pill to swallow. But when you're looking at the positives, I don't know if it really could have went that much better from an individual player perspective. Obviously, you would have liked to have a couple less strikeouts from a few guys, maybe get on base a few more times, then the games go a different way. But for Matt McLain to go and hit 2 home runs with 2 warning track shots in his first series back from a major injury, I don't know how much better you can feel about him than I think Reds country does right now. Jamer Candelaria, I know he fell kind of off a cliff in those last 2 games, but 3 RBIs on opening day. This is a guy that we talked all offseason about. He needs to be the guy that we tried to bring him in to be in order for this team to get to where we want him to get to this season. And now we see, 3 RBIs on opening day. That's a great thing to see. Elly De La Cruz, scoring 2 runs on opening day, having what seemed to be a much, much better approach at the plate than we saw last year. It was about as great as you can see. And then, as you said, Christian Encarnacion-Strand, the double on opening day, really stringing it together throughout the whole weekend, hitting a third of his at-bats, getting on base. I mean, that's just really phenomenal across the board in terms of every individual player that you'd be hoping to see. And even when you go to the bullpen, Emilio Pagán looked great on opening day, and obviously that got glossed over with what we saw from Ian Jabot, and then he comes in on Saturday and closes the game down. So I think there's a lot of bright spots that we're going to be able to look back on for this opening series, even though, we didn't get the win.
Matt McLain's really, really good at baseball. Very, very, very good. Trace tweeted out that he's the best. I don't know if he said the best second baseman of all time. I don't know what
Since Joe Morgan.
Since Joe Morgan. I'm going to disagree with that one. That's my guy, Brandon Phillips. I'll stick up for my guy, Brandon Phillips. But Matt McLain's unbelievable. And I think if he's the guy that we can build this roster behind, if he's the guy that you can pay, then that's going to make me feel really, really good about the future. We're all in the camp that you're not going to be able to pay Elly De La Cruz. If that's the case, we better damn well sign Matt McLain. And I want that deal done tomorrow. As soon as humanly possible, I need that deal done. I think Jacob told me he left Boris Corp, so I don't think he's with Boris anymore. He's with a new agent, so you're going to be able to get some sort of deal done. And that's what I want to see because he's unbelievable. He has 3 extra base hits to start the season.
No longer with Boris. He is now with Vayner Sports.
Okay.
Gary V representing our man.
Okay. So 2 RBIs, obviously those 2 home runs. I love Matt McLain. I'm not going to say anything bad about him.
Yeah.
CES is the X factor for this season. I was either going to be him or Jameer for me. For what it's worth, both players offensively have looked pretty solid. CES, 2 extra base hits out of his 4 hits. And I think that's going to be my guy I look for all season long to see if he's going to be able to stay at a major league level and contribute at a major league level. Because if you have a guy that's going to be able to produce power like that we all think that he can, it's going to change the season. And that's what I would like to see. Because as of right now, I mentioned it, not to get too much into the negatives in the positive segment, but the rest of the lineup, they don't exactly exude a whole lot of power. So I need the guys like Matt McLain, Elly, and CES to step up and step into that power role because they desperately need an offensive. We didn't get an outfield power bat, but we can replicate that in the aggregate, right? We can find CES and Matt McLain and Elly hitting for power.
Yeah, I think that thing, what you just said right there, is the worry for the rest of the season. When we're doing a Reds positive segment on this show, it does feel like it's going to be honed in around the same 3 to 5 players all year long, because the rest of that lineup, outside of those guys that we listed there, just really doesn't show you much. And that changes. Obviously, someone that's going to go in that group of hopefully mostly positives is going to be Tyler Stevenson whenever he gets back. And maybe Austin Hayes is the best $5 million outfielder the world has ever seen. So that would be great. And obviously, we can't grade this team fully until they're healthy. We said the same thing last year. I'm not going to go completely to a different side of the boat this year, but I didn't see a whole lot from the rest of the lineup outside of those guys that got me too excited about them this season.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Look, we said we were going to be positive. We gave our positives. It doesn't mean that there's no negatives to discuss, because I don't think we can sit there and highlight the strengths or highlight the positives from over the weekend without also starting to pick up on some trends 3 games in of a little of those concerns. I think when you see Spencer, let's break it down with Spencer Steer real quick. Is he helping or hurting this team? I love the toughness, the fact that obviously we thought he was going to start the season on the IL, the fact that we saw him DH obviously in that final spring training / exhibition game here at Dare Ballpark in Dayton. And then he's DH'd, to start the season, and that's probably going to be his role for the Reds if they keep putting off whatever it is that needs to be done for that shoulder. What kind of storyline is this? Is this a positive storyline of a guy that's still finding ways to contribute and help? Or is the storyline that he's hurting his team because, by the way, he's not contributing and he's not helping? What is the narrative with Spencer Steer in your eyes 3 games in at this point?
I think they said he's going to designate a hit because he can hit. Are we sure?
I don't know. If
Donuts on the weekend on 7 at-bats, 3 strikeouts.
Yeah.
He didn't look competitive really at all in either of the games he played with the at-bats he was getting. If you're going to be the designated hitter of the team, you got to be able to swing the bat. I mean, he's clearly not healthy. I don't think there's any reason to have him on this team getting at-bats.
It's overwhelmingly negative, the fact that Spencer Steer is on this roster as of right now. I commend him for trying. I thank him very much for his service. But you got to get healthy, brother. I mean, I don't know. And by the way, we still don't really have an answer as to what the issue is, right?
Yes.
We have a general idea of what's going on and what body part it is, but we don't know the actual root of the problem. And how is anybody supposed to understand when he's going to be available if nobody knows what the injury is? So this is a devastating problem. You need Will Benson back up. You need Reese Hines up. You need somebody that can at least give me something when they swing a bat. It makes me feel excited. So Spencer Steer, again, if you're not going to be able to contribute at all, there is zero reason for you to be in a Reds uniform right now. Get healthy. Hopefully you can be back by the All-Star break or whenever it is how long it takes for you to get healthy. But right now it is not helping this team. It is actively taking away from the offense.
Yeah.
Fair enough. We did get an update. Charlie Goldsmith had put out on X over the weekend, an update on Austin Hayes, by the way. You mentioned Will Benson. Obviously, Will Benson apparently is killing it right now, a couple of games in over in Louisville, so that's pretty cool. And we saw, last year was a bad year for him, but 2 years ago, obviously, when he was sent to the minors, he had a little run there and then came back and fixed whatever it was and went on a hell of a streak after. Will Benson might be called up pretty soon if this continues to look as bad as it does in the outfield. And I think a lot of that has to do with the lack of production from what they were hoping would be some glimmer of hope from Spencer Steer. That doesn't seem to be the case. And a lot of this is magnified because there's no Austin Hayes either. I know that was an underwhelming outfield acquisition in the offseason, but it has to be better than what we've seen thus far. But, of course, him starting the season on the IL, Charlie Goldsmith put out on X that Terry Francona said the goal for Austin Hayes with his calf injury is to return for the next homestand after they go out to San Francisco. So not this matchup with the Rangers, but the next one, he says. Hayes said it was good news with the MRI that it was a mild strain, similar to what I felt like I had last year when it came on, and I made the decision to play through it. He ended up grade 2ing it, is what he said. So obviously being cautious with it as far as that goes. Austin Hayes could be back within a week or two, but a week or two is a long time. So this outfield has to find a way to produce, not just offensively, but defensively. But a lot of offers. There's a lot of offers, donuts, as you called them earlier, Jacob. There's a lot of donuts in these stat lines 3 games in that needs to get resolved very quickly.
Is that where the Reds are at? Is that this front office's faith level in the roster that they built for opening day of the Major League Baseball season, where you have one injury to an outfielder or to a bat that you believe in, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter how hurt Spencer Steer is, he has to be in the lineup because you can't put a Major League lineup out there without him? Is that really the lineup that we went into the season with, the roster we went into the season with? What does Blake Dunn give you offensively? What does Jacob Hurtubise give you offensively that you can't take Spencer Steer out of the lineup when he's clearly not healthy? I understand they want to get Will Benson ABs in AAA rather than have him sit on the bench in the major leagues, but I don't care if the Louisville Bats win baseball games. I care if the Cincinnati Reds win baseball games. And we started out 1-2, and our DH in 2 of those games, the 2 that we lost, can't swing a bat. So I don't really know what the plan is.
I know it's limited at bats. Rhys Hines has 4 hits and 8 at bats with 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. To start that season. A guy like Noelvi Marte, who has lost the trust of this fan base, he's 4 for 11 right now, 364, 462. Will Benson, he's 6 for 14, 429. He's got a home run and a couple RBIs. Every single one of those players, as of right now, would be improved over Blake Dunn, Hurtubise, and Spencer Steer. Every single one of them.
All right, there you go. The Reds back in action tonight. They got the Rangers, 6:40 the first pitch, 6:10. Pregame coverage will begin right here on 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton, and, of course, wherever you listen to Reds baseball in Cincinnati, of course. But Brady Singer, we talked about some of the positives. I'm looking forward to seeing him tonight. I think a positive outing from him. Look, Reds getting an opening series win against the Rangers tonight would be huge, obviously. Getting a win with, obviously, Brady Singer on the mound would be even bigger, especially if he has a big-time performance tonight as well on his debut for the Reds. Thoughts ahead of Brady Singer's debut with the Reds coming up later on tonight? Again, trying to ride the ship a little bit, trying to put that Giants series behind. I can't think of a better way to do that than getting a series opening win against the Rangers with one of your new acquisitions, which is Brady Singer, who you traded Jonathan India away for. I'm very intrigued by what Brady Singer can do and add to this rotation, and I would love to see him get off to a hot start tonight.
I continue to be shocked every time I see it on social media how much this fan base just continues to miss Jonathan India.
Yep.
I mean, 2 home runs from Matt McLain over the weekend, turned 2 double plays on Saturday, and you still are missing the guy that's playing left field for the Kansas City Royals. I don't understand it. But, yeah, Brady Singer's starts and stat line's probably going to be one of the most important things for the Reds this year. I mean, if this team is relatively uncompetitive and Brady Singer doesn't look good, it's going to be loud from this fan base if Jonathan India is tearing it up in Kansas City. So I'm very, very interested to see Brady Singer pitch, and I will be all year long exactly as interested as I am to follow Jonathan India's stat lines in Kansas City, because those two are going to be graded next to each other for maybe the rest of their tenures with these 2 respective teams.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if you were. My bad.
No,
okay.
no, I was going to say, Jonathan.
Sorry, my bad.
Jonathan India 3 for 11. Jonathan India 3 for 11. I didn't have anything else to add. Jonathan India 3 for 11. That's all I'm going to say. Jonathan India 3 for 11.
Fair enough. My bad. Miscommunication on my end. I apologize. All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wing AM in Dayton. We'll step away for a few moments. Let's transition over to the NFL real quick. ESPN Bet put out their win totals for next season, and with all the bad vibes around the Cincinnati Bengals, it seems, outside, of course, of getting those deals done with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, of course, that is a good thing. No doubt about it. You keep your core locked up long term. But the offseason has been kind of a dud as far as free agency is concerned for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it just feels like a lot of negative vibes until you look at the win totals. Like, maybe this team is not as far off as what a lot of the doubters say when it comes to Cincinnati. We'll talk about the Bengals when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410, Wing AM in Dayton. Talked a lot about the Reds today. Obviously, finally, baseball season is here. We don't have to talk about spring training. We don't have to talk about what's the impact that Terry Francona is going to have. How good will, Matt McLain be in his return? Elly De La Cruz, what level could he take? We actually get to watch the games and react to it now versus just, the off-season talk and all that. I'm over spring training and ready and excited that the regular season's here. Reds back in action tonight. They have the Rangers, 6:40 the first pitch. Brady Singer going to be on the mound, making his debut for the Reds, and hopefully they put that Giants series behind them, and then the fans can get back to positive vibes only moving forward. But let's switch over to the Cincinnati Bengals. Weird offseason. Look, as we sit here right now, yes, the biggest offseason headlines for the Bengals, obviously getting everything taken care of when it comes to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, that's your core for the foreseeable future. And there's a lot of positives, obviously, that come with that. The negatives have come from the fact that this team had a lot of money to spend this offseason. They had a lot of holes that they needed to address and fix. And it's just been kind of a dud as far as the offseason goes, at least from a free agency standpoint. We still have to get to the draft coming up in the month of April, and we'll really get a better vibe of what the Bengals did to improve this team from last year heading into the 2025 season. But if you go outside of Cincinnati and outside of talking about the Jamar Chase, T. Higgins extensions, it just seems like this is just a horrible football team, that the defense is absolutely trash. The run game is trash. The offensive line is trash. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins are really, really good, but they're not good enough to overcome trash defense, trash O-line, trash run game, trash this, trash that. Like, there's something there with this team, and I found it very interesting when ESPN Bet put out their win totals for next season, even before we get to the draft, which is where I think you fans have to really rely on them improving this team the most. I thought it was interesting to take a look at these win totals, and we'll pop them up now for those watching on YouTube. I thought it was very interesting that the Bengals win total is sitting right there in double digits at 10.5. A game and a half improvement. I mean, a game and a half, but yeah, a game and a half improvement, if you will, winning 9 games last year. How do you guys feel looking at the Bengals win total right there? Only 3 teams have a better win total than them, and it's the Chiefs, Ravens, and Bills at this point, according to ESPN Bet. Were you even surprised by the Bengals win total line being set at 10.5?
No, I'm not. I don't really know what else it would be, and I don't understand why so many people are shocked. This team went 9-8 last year. They retained a historic offense. The defense statistically can't be much worse, and we know how that Patriots game ended. We know how the Chiefs game in Week 2 ended. We know how both Baltimore games ended. We know how the Chargers game ended. I mean, there's 6 games in this Bengals schedule out of those 8 losses that you can easily turn into wins if that oblong ball just bounces a different direction. So I think if Evan McPherson is even a shadow of the kicker he was 2 years ago, this team is hitting 10.5, probably last year when we're talking about a playoff team. So I don't think it's too much to imagine this team hitting 11 wins. I think last year it's very easy to find their way to 10, and then it's only a half game improvement if you make a couple kicks or a flag stays in a ref's pocket or maybe comes out against the Ravens on a 2-point conversion. So I think 10.5 is right about where this team should be. We always circle back to when you have an elite quarterback, you're going to be in the mix. And I know the Bengals didn't make the playoffs last year, and everyone hangs their hat on no elite quarterbacks, missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. But the Bengals were in the mix at the end of the season. They ended the year on a 5-game win streak. To be right there watching Week 18, waiting to see how those scores shook out to see if they were going to the playoffs. And that was with one of the least lucky seasons in NFL history. So, yeah, I think 10.5 wins for Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals is right about exactly where they should be.
It should be the expectation. We said it coming into, I don't know what show that was, a month ago, but we said that, our expectation this year for the Bengals is the postseason.
Yeah.
How to get into the postseason, you've got to win 10 games at least. And I think that the Bengals will win 11 games. I think the roster is going to be fine. The one-score thing or the close game, thing, eventually it falls for the Bengals. Eventually the luck goes your way. And I think that's what it comes down to. The Bengals lost every luck game that we could have last year, and whether or not you want to call it bad luck or just players not being good, that's fine.
Yeah.
My point being that I don't think the defense is going to be as bad as it was last year because it can't really be any worse. I guess if Trey does not play, if he sits out, maybe we'll have a different discussion. But if the Bengals have Trey Hendrickson playing in some capacity with a new defensive coordinator, I think the defense improves. Even if they improve slightly, they win 11 games last year. Just a little bit. they win 11 games. The offense, we know what that is. And the running game, I think, is fine. Chase Brown's really, really good. It just comes down to how good is that offensive line. And for what it was worth, last year wasn't great. It was at least serviceable. This year, I do have a couple questions, but again, as long as they're not the worst, the Bengals are going to be fine because we have the best when it comes to quarterback and wide receiver.
I see a lot of people in the chat pushing back on that 5-game win streak at the end of the year, and I'm sure Kenner was about to say it. The 5 wins came against 5 pretty bad teams. So why do you hang your hat on that one? Well, you play bad teams every year. And I think that's a level for the Bengals that we're at right now. Sure, we've lost those one-score games to all the competitors basically we played last year outside of the Eagles, but we beat the teams we were supposed to beat other than the New England Patriots. And that's a line of demarcation for teams in the league about where you're at. If the Bengals would have lost any of those 5 games, we're not watching that Broncos-Chiefs game in Week 8, wondering if we get into the playoffs. I think it means something pretty significant to beat, other than, again, in Week 1, which we blame on off-season practice and players being ready and contracts, holdouts, and everything along those lines. We took care of the teams that are considered worse than us, and that means a lot because plenty of teams in this league are looking back at the playoffs every single year saying, well, we lost, a bunch of these games that we shouldn't lose. And if you look at even a team like the Ravens last year, who I think if you ask any Baltimore Ravens fan about their season in 2024, they'd say it was a pretty good season, all things considered. They lost to the Raiders in Week 2. So those hiccups happen to everyone. And at the end of the season, it didn't happen for the Bengals when they needed those wins most. So I do think that means something from a culture perspective and moving forward into this year when you had to do something that most people viewed as impossible to keep yourself in the hunt, and then you do it. You still don't get into the playoffs, but I think that momentum does mean something going into next season.
In a separate conversation, I know we had this about the defense. I do think overreacting to those 5 wins from the defensive perspective that we talked about weeks ago, there's a separate debate that I said that then. In regards to this, I don't think that this has any standing in that. The fact that they took those 5 wins and momentum into the offseason, and you're right, by the way, if the Bengals are a bad team, they lose one of those 5 or 2 or 3 of those 5.
Yeah.
Good teams are supposed to win those. They won them. They did what they were supposed to. In that regards, they tried to dig themselves out of a hole that they, obviously put themselves in early in the season, and even in the middle with a couple of those tough losses against the Chargers and obviously the Ravens, and especially in the second one when it comes to that. As far as Cincinnati goes, it's not that I'm surprised. This team, you're right. The expectation, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, 10.5, a win total of 10.5, that's not that surprising. It should be that. I guess if you base it off vibes alone, if you base it off of not in Cincinnati, if you base it off how the team is talked about outside of Cincinnati, this team is going to be fighting for a wild card in 2025. I guess that's why, and I guess to be fair, to compete for a wild card, you still need 10 wins, obviously. Otherwise, the Bengals would have made the playoffs at 9 wins the last 2 years. So is what it is. I thought 10.5. I think it's the teams ahead of them as well that caught my attention as well. I mean, the teams that are ahead of them, no surprise. It's your Buffaloes, it's your Chiefs, it's Baltimore, teams like that. So that's fine. That doesn't surprise me, and I think Cincinnati's going to be just fine. I'm just curious to see what they do in the draft, which we'll talk plenty about as we get closer. I just thought it was a friendly line to give them considering the coverage of the team and considering they didn't add anything in the offseason, and we've yet to get to the draft. The thing is, I think that line total can go up a game or 2 if they nail the draft, whatever nailing the draft means as we sit here right now.
I do think something that's interesting to look at always when I look at team win totals is not necessarily what the number is next to the Bengals, but how it relates to the rest of the league, because that just kind of tells me where they view this team. Casey, if you could throw that back up there real quick. Yep. You see a few places below the Bengals, the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I think, as you're talking about, vibes outside of Cincinnati. If they're able to get this Aaron Rodgers deal across the finish line, I think most national media view them as a more legitimate contender, at least from a regular season perspective, than the Cincinnati Bengals with the current roster structure. And they have for the Bengals a full 2 games better than the Steelers with this current situation. Now, obviously, maybe a signing of Aaron Rodgers getting over the finish line bumps the Steelers by a win or so, but how many wins do you think an Aaron Rodgers signing would be worth for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because I would say, even with that addition, the Bengals should be about 2 wins better than the Steelers. So I think 10.5 and slotted right in there as the 4th best contender in the AFC, I guess tied with the Chargers, also at 10.5. I think that's exactly where the Bengals belong, and I think the discrepancies, 1.5 between those top 2 and 2.5 between the back end of the wild card, I think that seems to make a lot of sense to me with how this shakes out. The one that really jumps off the page outside of the Bengals that's surprising to me is the New England Patriots, picking as high as they are in the draft with a rookie quarterback we only saw once with a win total of 7.5. That seems like a pretty significant jump. But the Bengals in relation to the rest of the AFC seem to make a lot of sense to me, even if you think that 10.5 number is really high.
There's a lot of teams on there that, again, based on, though the quarterback position weighs very, very heavy, there's a lot of teams on there that would rather be in the Bengals' current situation, even with the defensive faults, the offensive line struggles, with all the problems that you think the Bengals have. There's probably, 10 teams almost that probably would rather be in the Bengals' position than the position that they're in.
Oh, no doubt. Like every team below them, no doubt. And like the draft, it's the draft. It's all going to come down to that. And so if the starting block is 10.5 wins for the win total before that, I think they'll be in good shape. Any other team on there? So you said the Patriots surprised you. Any other team surprised you where they fell on that list, good or bad? For me, I thought the fact that the Raiders were way at the bottom kind of surprised me. I'm not saying that they're making the playoffs or winning a Super Bowl, but they went out and got a legit quarterback in Geno Smith. You arguably have the best tight end in football at this point in Brock Bowers. Like, I'm a little surprised at how low they are on the Raiders, especially because the defense is what kept them in games last year. I love their defense. I like that they went out and got Geno Smith. Bowers is obviously key when it's all said and done. Are you guys surprised that the Raiders are as low on that list as what they are?
I'm not, because I'm not a Geno Smith guy. Everyone that tells me how much he's going to save the Raiders organization tells me how bad the offensive line was in Seattle. Well, he's going to a team picking in the top 5 of the draft. He has Jacoby Myers as his wide receiver 1 when he's been throwing to DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigbo for the last 3 years. I mean, I just don't see that team being competitive in an AFC that I think is an absolute gauntlet. I mean, you look at their division alone. The Broncos proved last year that they're at least a perennial playoff contender if they're not a playoff team. I have a ton of faith in the Harbaugh-led Los Angeles Chargers, and we know what the Chiefs are. So how many games in that division do you think the Raiders can win? And if we're looking at, an 0-6 or a 1-5, then I think it's pretty hard to get to that 6-win mark. I think this conference is really, really good this year, and I just don't think the addition of Geno Smith, and if they can't get, some real playmakers, which they haven't necessarily done so far, Brock Bowers is going to have to carry that offense, and I just don't think he can do much better than he did last year, and we see how many wins that equated to. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me, though I do think Pete Carroll will have that organization going in the right direction much sooner rather than later.
I think that the Raiders play in a gauntlet of a division. They play 6 tough division games. That's why I think they're that low. You know what I mean? They're not gonna be favored in any single division game they play. So for that reason alone, I would take them to have probably right around that win total. I am a little bit shocked that the Browns are I don't think the Browns have the worst roster. I could be wrong. I guess it all depends on who they get. It depends who they have at quarterback.
Right.
But if it's Kenny Pickett, then they're obviously.
If they take a Shedeur Sanders, that certainly gets them up above that last spot.
I would take them above. I think they're better than the Titans than whatever the Titans got going on. So
yeah, I was confused too, but I'm a homer. But I didn't get the Titans being ahead of the Browns, like the Jets being ahead of them. The Jets have a good defense, but the Browns have a good defense. But the only one I had a problem with being ahead of the Browns was the Titans, and not just because they're picking ahead of them in the draft order, but when you think of the Titans, what are they? What do they? I don't think they have one position group that you could say, they're led by that group. The Browns at least have that defense, especially with Myles Garrett leading the way, and fat and happy now, and paid and taken care of. I just don't know what the Titans have. It is what it is. The Browns, 4.5. I can't really sit here and get that defensive.
Unless you're including the draft picks. Unless you're incorporating Cam Ward into that, then it doesn't make sense. But if you're including Cam Ward as their quarterback in terms of thinking of 5.5, I might say that's low.
Yeah.
So
maybe.
Yeah.
I've learned I will never defend the Browns until they give me something to defend them on. So I'm going to.
They also play in the AFC South, and you play in the AFC North, which
is
probably a win or two right there.
Bingo. Just figured. See, you got to talk these problems out, and then we all come to a solution. I like it. Casey, how we feel? Your Bengals 10.5. The win total. The win total out of the AFC.
Not to reiterate all the same points we've already mentioned, but I think that's right about where they should be. 10.5. I mean, there were 7 one-score games last year, and they were on the wrong side of those just about every single time. Yeah, I'll take my chances on them improving just a little bit and getting above that 10-win mark. Yeah, so those are my quick thoughts.
How do we feel about I know this sounds silly, but the Chiefs, who just won back-to-back Super Bowls, got to a third straight Super Bowl, obviously got blown out in that Super Bowl against the Eagles. But that offense, I don't care who the quarterback is, that offense is not that exciting. It's not that explosive. More off the field issues throughout the offseason with Xavier Worthy and some others. It's like, I don't know, man. If you really want to look at the Steelers and the Chiefs and say which one are you more confident is going to regress this upcoming season, I don't know who you would pick in that scenario. Pittsburgh has a tradition of always winning, and so does the Chiefs during the Patrick Mahomes era. But there's nothing about that offense that I find flattering, and it wasn't flattering last year, but I do feel like it regressed down the stretch as well. It got exposed in the Super Bowl against the Eagles. Luckily, they don't play the Eagles every single week. But are the Chiefs as good as what they're being propped up to be? I look at that win total, and I'm like, unless they add a legit playmaker, that Tyreek Hill's trying to do his damnedest to get out of Miami, it seems. Maybe they find a way to land him. Unless they make a miracle addition to that offense, I don't buy into that Chiefs offense, as wild and ridiculous as that sounds.
They're going to add Rashee Rice.
Yeah, like I think that you can have that thought and that opinion, but that's just like my opinion on the Brewers, and all they do is win 100 games. So like the Chiefs won 15-2 with an offense that's going to get better in Rashee Rice this season. You know what I mean? They also lost Isaiah Pacheco for a large portion of that season. Kareem Hunt had to come in, and even when Pacheco came back, he wasn't healthy. So, you know, the Chiefs' offense is what it is. The Chiefs are they're the team to beat still. They'll always be the team to beat until somebody finally beats them in the AFC.
My level of concern with Kansas City will be measured with exactly who makes it to pick 31 on draft night, because they are praying more than the Bengals and Bengals fans are for positions to work out. Because we've talked a lot about how the Bengals are going into this draft with their hands tied behind their back because they have to draft a guard and they have to draft pass rush help. Well, the Chiefs are in a very similar situation. Right now, their starting tackles are Jawan Taylor, who they did everything to get out of the lineup last year, and Jalen Moore, who didn't even start a game for them last year when they had a healthy lineup. So I am really, really worried about this Chiefs offensive line. The 2 times we've seen them look non-competitive in the Patrick Mahomes era, the Super Bowl against the Buccaneers and the Super Bowl against the Eagles, the reason why that took place was Patrick Mahomes was running for his life the entire time. Right after that Bucs Super Bowl, the Chiefs poured a ton of money into that offensive line to protect Patrick Mahomes, and obviously it resulted in multiple championships since then. Their solution this year, trade your all-pro guard Joe Thuney to the Bears. So I'm really worried about how this is going to shake out if they're unable to get lucky in the draft. But we've also learned over the last however many years, the Chiefs are just going to get lucky in the draft. And it's going to work out, and they're going to be fine. I think I feel better about their offensive lineup in terms of weapons going into this year than I did last year. And, I mean, that's with a healthy Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy with a whole year under his belt, Isaiah Pacheco without a broken leg. I have a hard time thinking the Chiefs are going to win less than 13 games until the Chiefs win less than 13 games.
Yep.
Fair enough. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ring, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Let's switch over to college basketball as we wrap it up. The Final Four is set. Duke is in, obviously, the Final Four. No surprise there. And they're being led by what many are starting to throw out as the best one-and-done player in the history of college basketball. Do you guys agree, disagree? Cooper Flagg, what an amazing season he has had, an amazing tournament run on top of that. It was almost ruined because of those meaningless money grab conference tournaments that Jacob loves so much. But luckily, he's overcome that roadblock and has had a hell of a run.
By Jacob, you mean college basketball fans.
The majority, yes, the majority. Nonetheless. But all right, we'll step away for a few moments and we'll pick up with this when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. The Reds start out the season 1-2, but they're second place in the NL Central, so there's a positive. The other positive is they get right back at it tonight. They kick off the series with the Rangers at Great American Ballpark, 6:40, the first pitch, 6:10. Coverage begins on the radio side, so keep that in mind. But that's coming up later. We talked about the Bengals win totals. ESPN Bet put out the win totals for the upcoming season. The Bengals sitting at 10.5. The Bills, the Chiefs, and the Ravens all have higher win totals than them ahead of them, but that just shows you the mix of teams in the AFC that they're right there with. So we discussed that. Now we're going to switch over to some college basketball talk. Before we do that, we appreciate everyone who's tuning in and hanging out with us here today. If you could just give us a like, give the show stream a like, we appreciate that. That helps with the algorithm and the push of the show and helps us grow it. So that we greatly appreciate. Give it a like, give it the thumbs up nonetheless. But we welcome you back. The Final Four. So this has been an very interesting tournament because all I'm being told is
this tournament is stunk.
This is it's the weirdest take in the world.
This tournament.
College basketball is the only sport in the world where having great teams is a bad thing. You have a team go 15-0 in college football. The national media is upset when they lose because we hunt greatness. Now we have a year of March Madness where we have 4 historically good teams, and it's a bad thing that they've buzzsawed their way to San Antonio? Of the top 10 teams in KenPom history, these 4 are in there. And it's better for the sport if great teams lose to nobodies? I just can't wrap my head around that. Duke's the second best team of all time, according to KenPom. Houston's 6, Florida's 8, Auburn's 10th. No one else in that top 10 missed the Final Four. And it's a good thing for the sport if one of these 4 teams do? I just don't understand that at all. This should be praised for college basketball. The 4 teams in your Final Four are combined 135-16. That's unbelievable. You finally have a year where you have 4 dominant teams start to finish where it shows that your sport matters for more than a month. And that you can have teams that are good from wire to wire instead of pure randomness in the tournament. I think this is as good as we've ever seen. And we were rewarded this weekend with awesome, awesome games. And I think we're going to get more in the Final Four.
The Duke-Alabama game stunk. The Houston-Tennessee game stunk. I'd argue the Auburn game stunk too. I think these games have not been as good as advertised. I think there's been a couple good games. I mean, the Texas Tech-Arkansas game was great. Here's my problem. I don't watch March Madness for the Final Four, and maybe that's my issue. But the final 2 games being good does not outweigh an entire tournament of bad games. That's my issue. I don't care that the 1 seeds are there. I care that the games haven't been that good. That's my thing. There's been a decent amount of okay games down the stretch here, but the first 2 rounds were absolutely woeful. And the fact of the matter is, this tournament makes its money on upsets. That's why we all watch it.
It gets more money with this.
We love watching the underdog. Somebody put it in the chat. You don't watch Goliath versus Goliath. That's for college football. I want to watch David versus Goliath.
More people watch Goliath versus Goliath.
I don't. I like it.
That's what I mean. College basketball fans hate basketball. They want to see little buzzer beater fun stuff for an 11 seed to lose by 20 in the Sweet 16. You finally get gifted 4 good teams, and you're mad about it because you didn't have a fun Thursday at noon.
It's not true.
Ridiculous.
San Diego State was a 5 seed. FAU was like a 9 seed.
Stunk.
Those games ended in a buzzer beater. What are you talking about?
You'd rather have that than a team that's good all year long?
Yes, I would rather have that Final Four than this Final Four.
Because you don't like basketball. You like storylines.
UConn was like a 4 seed that year. That Final Four was incredible. That was one of the best Final Fours ever, and no one was even remotely close to a 1 seed.
You would absolutely rather have 1 seeds. More people watch it.
No,
everyone in the world in every sport other than college basketball appreciates greatness. College basketball teams hate great teams.
I'm okay with greatness. Again, I was okay with 4 1 seeds getting here as long as we had something to watch in the first couple of rounds. Because those are my favorite days of the year. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. Sure, that's a fact. I want to see the little dog guy win. What did I text you this weekend? Give me St. Francis in the Elite 8. I don't care. They're a Division III program. I'd love to see him continue on. Dance, baby. That's what this tournament is. It's about fun. I want to have fun, damn it. And the fact of the matter is I haven't had a lot of fun. If you're an Alabama fan or a fan of Duke or a fan of these elite programs, then yeah, you're having a great tournament. But for the rest of us who didn't have really a rooting interest, this has been kind of unfortunate.
If your rooting interest is to watch basketball, you've been rewarded greatly with 4 historic teams.
Nah.
So if you like fun and storylines, maybe don't watch, sports.
My theory on the NCAA tournament has always been, and I think we got in a debate about this months and months ago before college basketball was even something we spent time on the show. I I want all my upsets in the first 2 rounds. Outside of that, I want the better teams and the better programs, better players in my Elite Eights, Final Fours, national championships. I said that to me, that's the perfect blend. This year, not a lot of buzzer beaters, really no major upsets. It was kind of dull, and I thought, man, this might be one of the most boring tournaments in quite some time from a vibe perspective. I love college basketball, so I love these matchups. But this line right here caught my attention that the ratings for the NCAA men's basketball tournament on CBS, TBS, TNT, and Blue TV, they drew their biggest audience in more than 30
People don't
years.
care.
People don't care. People, I do think
NCAA is dying.
Yes. I think that the casual fans tune in for the first round, 2 rounds of the tournament for those upsets. But outside of that, those are the casual fans that could just kind of disappear a little bit. But the true college basketball fans, even the casual fans, if you will, they know the Duke brand, right? They know the Michigan State brand. They know these brands. And I think that captures more people and more people's attention than when obviously we watched Florida Atlantic make it a few years ago. That's a good storyline, but it's not a good ratings draw. It's a storyline. It's something that's great to write about and a good feel-good story. You can maybe make a movie about it down the road, but ultimately at the end of the day, I want my heavy hitters. I want my heavyweights. I want my brand teams, and that's what we get with this Final Four. I love that it's all ones. And then everyone out there that, like Elliot, no offense, everyone out there that's like Elliot says, no, this is horrible. At the end of the day, the ratings disagree with everybody. I love this, but even I thought it was bad for college basketball. I'm wrong too, Elliot. Like, the ratings have been through the roof for this tournament, but I think we could all agree it hasn't been the most exciting, but these matchups have been must-see, if you will, and the ratings reflect that.
Every time the last undefeated team loses in the NFL, we talk about the 72 Dolphins. Every time the NBA season rolls around and someone picks up their 11th loss, we talk about the 72-10 Bulls. Greatness is revered in every single sport. Now you have 4 teams that are fighting to be debatably, any of these 4 teams winning the championship could be considered one of the best teams of all time in college basketball. And it's viewed as a negative because they've dominated lesser opponents in the first few rounds. I just can't possibly wrap my head around how having a season where the regular season finally matters to your championship and saying that it's a bad thing for your sport. And it's the people that claim to be the biggest college basketball fans that are saying it's the worst thing possible. It seems to be the casuals that are, appreciating this more than anyone else, which, again, makes even less sense to me. If I was, a diehard just college basketball fan, the sport in general, I would be parading around these 4 teams the proudest I've ever been about a Final Four. My sport has greatness that no other sport has had. We didn't see a 12-team playoff this year with 4 of the best teams in the history of the sport in it. And when we did, we saw Georgia lose early because they lost their quarterback. And we saw Ohio State play Notre Dame, which was a 7 seed holding the trophy at the end of the year. That wasn't what people were hoping for. They were hoping for Oregon to finish the year 16-0 and be in the conversation for one of the greatest teams ever. Now you have a Final Four where whoever holds the trophy and cuts down the nets in San Antonio is going to be in that discussion. I think it's great, and I think we're going to see just awesome stuff at the front end of next college basketball season, since the regular season now actually matters. I mean, it used to be you don't have to watch because you turn on in March, and who knows? Who cares if a team has 35 wins? They'll lose to, the 14 seed. That doesn't matter. Now it might. Now those games might matter.
I think the regular season has always mattered. I think it's always mattered. I think the ratings, for what it's worth, I think Mousecop does bring up a fair point. Gambling has taken over the world. It's become, March Madness is the #1 gambling event in the known universe. Like, that's what it's labeled as. So that's why people are watching these games, because they have more money on these games than ever before. And I do think that Jacob's not wrong when it comes to having great basketball at the end. But again, like, I want to have good games throughout the tournament. I want to see the buzzer beaters. I don't even care about the upsets. I want good game winners. We had 1 overtime game through a tournament, So that's not what we wanted to see. We wanted to see better basketball this year, and that's not what we got in this tournament. This has been one of the worst tournaments in my lifetime.
But you wanted to see worse basketball.
See, your definition of worst basketball and my definition is very different.
If Duke plays good basketball, they win by 20.
You guys wrote off the FAU San Diego State game. Like, that game wasn't awesome. Like, that game was one of the best games in the last several years.
But you can't say it's good basketball.
That game ended on a buzzer beater to go to a championship.
And it's
Like,
better basketball than Duke scoring 93 because they can't miss and defend their butts
But
off?
I don't want to see Duke score 90. I don't
want to watch great teams.
Yeah, but like my point being though, I would instead of seeing BYU take Alabama and Alabama beating the brakes off BYU, yeah, I would have rather seen a little guy play there. I would have rather seen somebody I didn't really know and see the storylines in March Madness. That's what it is. This one shining moment video, it's going to be that one guy with the boombox for McNeese State, and then it's going to be a bunch of uncontested layups and dunks by the 1 seed.
It's going to be all the All-Americans instead of people you've never heard of before.
Yeah, but I like the people I've never heard of. That's what this March.
That's not true, Elliot. That's not true.
It's not.
What's not true?
No one likes the people they've never heard of before.
I like the people we've never heard of.
You like them for 2 days.
I like
You
Doug
like them
Eater.
for 2 days and you forget about him forever.
I like Doug. I like Doug Eater. Give me him back.
You don't. Then
and that resulted in a terrible Sweet 16.
How come you buried the first 4 then? You should love the first 4, Elliot. You should love those no-name teams. You should be all about the 16 seeds. You brushed through.
Whoa. What? What did I do?
You brushed through major basketball.
Wait. What did I say? I was in on the first 4. What are you talking about?
No, the 16 seeds. You called them the bad teams. You highlighted the North Carolina.
Well, yeah, because that's your good basketball. They're the Goliaths of the tournament. They're the Davids of the tournament. They're the Davids of the tournament. Of course, there are teams that are worse than Duke. That's not what I'm saying here. Of course, you don't expect the 1 seeds to go on a championship level run, but you expect at least a couple of upsets every once in a while. It's been completely chalk. There's been no upset since the Sweet 16.
That's what I mean.
Not a single upset.
How do you complain that your 1s and 2 seeds are good? You want them to be bad. That's what you're arguing for. You want your 1s and 2 seeds to be worse than they are this year, so they lose earlier. That's the argument.
Yeah, but this level of I watch sports to see greatness.
That's all you watch sports. That's anyone. That's all anyone should. You're the biggest person if you don't win a championship, it's a failure.
I agree.
You're the biggest person.
I agree.
And now you just want an upset in the first weekend for fun?
Correct.
I want a team to go 40-0.
No.
That's why you do. That's why you play sports.
I want to see fun basketball. I want to see a fun brand of sports. If I told everybody right now there was never going to be another upset in the history of sports, nobody would watch another game. Nobody would watch another game. That's a fact. So the fact of the matter is, sports are the best drama on television. And when I get to watch March Madness, that really comes into play because you have the bad teams, the no-name teams that make themselves known for a day. It gives them a shot, and I love that. This again, the college football mindset and college basketball mindset, they should be 2 different mindsets. Because it's so top-heavy. This year, it's been more top-heavy in college basketball than ever before. That's 100% true. But I don't think that should be the case going forward every year. I still don't think. I don't love that. I don't love the idea of I just watch for greatness.
If you're watching sports other than to try to win games, we have different mindsets.
Oh, 100% we do. Because I think it's more fun to have the underdog. I think it's way more fun to have when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. That was vastly more fun as the underdog.
It would have been more fun if we would have won the Super Bowl.
Well, sure, that's not what I'm saying. But I am saying and again, the TV ratings thing always doesn't come into play because the TV ratings for that Super Bowl is terrible.
Yeah, I'm a Cincinnati fan.
It's because it's not everybody wants to see the Cincinnati Bengals.
Now I'll tell you this: if I'm not a Bengals fan, I'd rather watch 2 big market teams play than the Bengals. I don't know if that's groundbreaking news.
What do you mean, though?
If I'm not a Bengals fan, I'd much rather watch 2 star teams play. I'd rather watch Philly versus Kansas City than 2.
I would have rather watched the Lions. I would have rather seen the Lions in there taking on the Chiefs than the Eagles.
Lions were the 1 seed, so favorites, yeah.
But that's the
big name contender that won 15 games.
But it's Detroit. It's Detroit. It's Detroit.
Went 15-2, Elliot.
That's what but it's Detroit. That's what I'm saying. I would have rather seen the Commanders then. How about that one? I would rather seen the Commanders play the Chiefs in that Super Bowl. I think it would have been more fun.
Would have got terrible ratings.
It would have, but I don't care about the ratings all that much. I think the ratings are whatever. The sports are never going away. Ratings don't really change that much.
Look, this tournament, 5 double-digit seeds win in the first round. Obviously, the final matters, but there was a lot of near upsets too. I mean, Jacob, Robert Morris, old Bob Moe.
Yeah. That game was awesome.
There was magic there that happened. Obviously, Alabama was able to hold them off. There have been some chaotic moments throughout this tournament. I think the lack of buzzer beaters, there was no Jack Golke from Oakland like last year. I mean, it was the manager of McNeese that really stole the attention of every one away, when it comes to that run right there. But it's still a fun tournament. I will say this, though. Here's where I'll side with Elliot. This tournament will lead to expansion of the tournament.
Yeah.
Because if people want to see bigger branded teams more, Well, guess what? We're expanding this thing into the 70s and 80s then, because we're going to get more big teams in and we're going to get more chalk tournaments because, unfortunately, we all watched. So that's the problem. I do think that that's going to lead to expansion is how many people watch the chalk tournament. I did think that without all the buzzer beaters and without all the upsets, if ratings plummeted because of that, I thought that would have benefited those who don't want expansion because, you want those upsets to happen and that decreases the more you add it. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But
the people that said they weren't going to watch because it's chalk, they lied. The people that said they aren't going to watch because the underdogs win, they tell the truth. So that's the biggest difference between the two things.
I mean, I still watch the games because I like watching basketball. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I would have rather had a couple upsets here and there. And again, the ratings thing I do think is skewed for March Madness, given the fact that it's the most bet on thing in the entire world. I do think everybody loves those first people. It's pretty much a national holiday that Thursday, Friday.
I think you're using the wrong thing though. You got to say that it's streaming, not gambling.
Yeah, I mean it's
gambling's been around forever, so that excuse makes no sense.
Streaming. Okay, then that's true too. Streaming is obviously.
Did they not, with all the upsets last year, did they not bet on the games last year?
No, they did. I'm not saying they didn't, but I'm saying, Kinner, as each tournament happens, it grows. That's what I'm saying. Like next year, I bet the ratings are going to be better than this year because more people get to know about March Madness. They get to experience March Madness.
I want to test this theory. I want upsets next year.
Yeah.
I want to test
No one will watch the 7, 8, 9, 11 Final Four.
Yes, I love it.
Kinner, you
enough of this stupid. What?
Cooper Flagg stinks. He's not a top 15 player.
That's right.
Oh, that's tomorrow's show. We're pushing that to tomorrow's show. That's a nice tease. I will say this, though. Why are we talking about this loser NCAA tournament? Well, we got the Crown to focus on for tomorrow for the Bearcats. We got a Bearcats. We got to get a Bearcats writer on. We got a preview. Are Bearcats writers still working? Are they making the trip to Vegas?
I don't know.
I mean, we get Mr. Springer on tomorrow. We'll figure something out. But we're out of time. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you give that a like down at the bottom on your guys' way out. We appreciate you. What do we have today? Do we have box lunch coming up?
We have box lunch. Yep, we'll do that here in a bit. This is a special note. The Reds have a Chatterbox Reds pregame show. That is tonight at 5:40. So 5:40. The Reds pregame show will begin. So if you're able to watch that, tune in tonight for the pregame show. Obviously, the Chatterbox Reds crew will go live after as well. But the pregame shows is starting to start up here. So tune in with all the pregame stuff for the Reds.
All right, good stuff. That wraps it up for us. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. So, yeah, Tuesdays, Thursdays. We welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kenner, Case McCallis, Elliot Rue, and Jacob Tissett. So, Jacob hates the little guy. I think we established that.
Always.
I was more pro Jacob in that argument than Elliot, although I want to agree with Elliot. I want the upsets. I want all that stuff as well. At the end of the day, regardless of what side you're on, I was surprised that the ratings were up. I was surprised about that because this tournament is weird. Everyone's complaining about it. You'd think it would be bad, but the ratings are through the roof. It's kind of like the Stephen A. Smiths and the Skip Baylesses of the world. Everyone says those two are the absolute worst, yet those two draw the most ratings and those two draw the most money. So it's kind of like this. Like everyone has a take on this, but I'm surprised that the ratings support the chalk tournament run that we've seen up to this point. But We'll see.
I don't care about the ratings. Good for the ratings. I'm happy for the ratings. The fact of the matter is I want to watch good basketball. So I'm going to watch.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Let me change it. I want to watch fun basketball.
You want to watch fun basketball.
Jacob had the audacity to text me about Alabama beating Duke. He said, I deserve this.
I do. I get nothing.
He said with a straight face, if you could see a straight face in text language.
They lost in the Final Four
said,
last year.
I deserve Alabama beating Duke to get to a Final Four. The guy who wanted to fire his head coach mid-hoist of his national championship trophy.
They lost in the Final Four last year. I thought I had deserved another shot.
Jacob deserves nothing. He deserves absolutely nothing, and everything that he does is what's wrong with sports today. There should be more fans of UNC Wilmington out there to silence the Jacobs of the world. That's a fact. I'm tired of it.
By the way,
I want St. Francis, PA in the Final Four.
I think they're a D3 school now.
They are.
Yeah.
Did you see that horrible, god-awful game that Florida came back, by 10 with about 4 minutes to go? I mean, that was an unbelievable, horrible game the other day. Elliot, were you booing the entire time watching that?
If you're gonna go shot for shot with good games to bad games this tournament, you're gonna lose.
Not if you determine good games when good teams play well and bad teams get dominated.
You're gonna lose it.
Why is it considered a bad basketball game when a good team plays really well?
Because it's not close.
But that doesn't make it good or bad.
Yes, it does.
If Duke
a good game is a competitive basketball game where both teams are fighting equally.
No, a good game is when both teams play to the best of their ability. If that results in a 40-point blowout loss, that means one team's great.
Yeah, but I don't care about watching that. Like I don't want to watch. I don't want to watch a 60-point blowout. I don't care if they score 175 points.
You don't want good team. You want every team to be the same level so that any seed can win.
Correct.
Right. So you don't want good teams.
That's fine. If I have to say that, if I have to say that, then that's fine. I'll say I don't want good teams.
Like if Duke and Houston and Auburn and Florida were all like 25 net rating instead of 40, you'd probably have more upsets.
Yeah, maybe. I probably would. And I'd like it a lot more. All I wanted was overtime. Could I just get more overtime games? What about one more buzzer beater? Huh? One more buzzer beater.
Buzzer beaters make me stay up too late. Give me a 20-point blowout in the 10 o'clock slot.
Come on.
What if it's all the one seeds winning the buzzer beaters in overtime games?
You would have been mad.
All I'm saying is this tournament better end with Florida hitting a half-court shot to beat Duke in the championship. That's all. That'll make up for all of it. If that happens, then I'll take it and we'll all move on and be happy because that's what's going to happen. Or Auburn. You know what? I might start cheering for Auburn.
Okay.
To spite you. That's what I might do. I hate the SEC.
So you're going to cheer for Auburn to make your SEC take right?
I have to be right on one of them then.
If Arizona State and Boise State made the national championship game in football, would that have been a good thing, Elliot, or a bad thing?
Who are they playing?
Arizona State on the top half of the bracket for the playoff, and Boise was on the bottom. If those two met in the national
championships, then that'd be a great national championship. Yeah, it'd be elite. That'd be fantastic.
I love you.
Underdogs. I root for the underdogs. Now we got two underdogs.
Even Indiana could have.
Probably would have been a better game than that fraudulent program Notre Dame had.
TCU Georgia was so fun to watch.
That was a good one.
It was a real barn burner.
But to use your argument, that was greatness. Who doesn't like watching the Bulldogs drop 70?
Do we not talk about that Georgia team every single year in college football?
I guess.
Their defense just won a Super Bowl.
Casey, would you rather have an underdog win or would you rather have the favorite win?
I'd rather have the underdog win.
Thank you, Casey.
I am on the side of I want to watch competitive games.
That's a fine word.
I want to watch competitive games. I don't want to watch blowouts.
That's what I said.
No, you said you want to watch good basketball.
I said I want to watch close games. I want to watch
competitive games.
Thank you, Casey. That's all we want to watch.
I want to watch good basketball.
This tournament's been the worst tournament we've ever had. The worst.
I still think that SDSU Miami UConn year was the worst.
Yeah. To be fair though, to Jacob's point, you can have two 1 seeds go at it and it'd be a competitive game. It'd be two great teams going at it. So I don't disagree with the idea of like competitive goes both ways.
And also we've all watched Duke play at this point. I mean, if Houston or Tennessee would have gotten upset, you think like number 6 Illinois versus Duke in the Final Four wouldn't have been like a 50-point blowout?
No, but it's not even the same thing. I understand the point, but it's like in the first 2 rounds, my whole argument stems from the first 2 rounds. I don't give a damn.
You just
what
don't
happens
care
after.
about who the champion of college basketball is. You care about the first 2 days.
As long, let me be very clear. If I do not have money on it, or the Bearcats are not competing for the national championship, spoiler, they'll never do that. If that's not the case, then correct. I do not care who wins tournaments.
All right.
I do not care.
Jacob, you know why I know people don't care about the underdogs is this. Have you ever heard of one of the blue blood teams having to have their manager be the story of their tournament run? Have you ever, if Sister Jean was a Duke fan, would we even have heard of Sister Jean? Let's just be clear. No one cared
Coach
about
K would have kicked her out.
We don't need Sister Jean at Duke. We're Duke, right? We don't need the manager from McNeese. I don't even know what his name is. He's a traitor, too. He's following him over to NC State or whatever. We'll see if NC State makes the tournament next year, if anyone will care about their manager or not. Probably not. Like, that's how I know people don't care about the little guy, because they have to find something that's interesting about them, and it's not their basketball team.
None of you guys knew my name when we made back-to-back championships at Alabama.
There you go.
I was the manager.
Is that how we're going to end it? That's how we'll end it.
No little guys.
That's how we'll end it.
Off the bench, official stance, anti the little guy in sports.
Not me. I stand up for the little guy.
Go Horizon League, though. Go right state.
That's right.
That's right.
Green Bay.
Everybody. No, not Green Bay. Not Doug Gottlieb. Poor guy. He lost his leading scorer to the portal today. Tough day to be old Doug Gottlieb.
No. Oh,
yeah,
that's miserable.
After he bragged about their culture after winning, 5 games, he bragged about their culture and how they were returning their leading scorer, and then 3 days later, that scorer announced he's entering the portal.
Speaking of culture,
Bearcat?
Maybe. Speaking of culture and hard coaching, Rick Pitino, one of the only ones left, lost his best player because he coached him a little bit.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh, yeah.
How about that?
Your coach, Oates, is staying. There was reports of him being interested in the Maryland job. Speaking of culture, he loves the culture.
Oh, no.
He said he's staying.
Kinner.
What? Did I get? I'm done. Did I get? I'm out. Bye. This is enough against presented by.
No.
End it, Elliot. End it, Casey.
Off the bench. We'll see you guys tomorrow.